It wasn't that it's bloody freaking snowing out there, and my van's thermostat isn't working. Yeah, it's official. My van needs medical help. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So I had two videos. Which one should I make first? Okay. Yeah, I guess this plays in. Throw some numbers at you. Okay. It looks like up here in Canada, Justin Trudeau's plan. Check out my head. Well, basically, there's going to be tax hikes between now and 2055. yeah, it's like increasing to tackle the debt burden that he's putting on now. How much tax increases, I don't know. But again, he didn't run it. He's run up the taxes or the deficit pretty high for 1 year. But I don't know if we're talking like 0.8 of a tax hike, that type of thing. But it's still a tax hike nonetheless. The other thing is that by that time or around that time, I was also reading that Justin Trudeau's plan that he has at the current rate we're going at would have us at 1.5 or 1.35 trillion dollars around that time. That's when Canada. That's not that far away when you think about it. It's not like the States where they rack up trillions of dollars every year. About $4 trillion a year type of thing. But that's significant. That is significant for the future generations to have to pay off. And the thing is we could, right from where we are now, 4 years of Justin Trudeau puts us in a bad spot, but 8 years of Justin Trudeau destroys the country, which right now the new census polls, I think, or whatever, coming out of Canada, is by 2036, pretty much half of the Canadian demographic will be either foreign-born or children of immigrants. So the demographic change is well under place, and that's not that far away, really. That's only, 50. Well, we're 2017, so 10 years, 9 years, 9 years away. Sorry, 20 years away. I can't add today. Yeah, so it's 2017. Yeah, so just about 20 years away, and that's going to go fast. Now, that's if we keep at current immigration levels of almost 500,000 people a year, which is, remember, the government has turned it into a very profitable thing to have mass immigration. It's not really done from a point of view of, cultural enrichment and all stuff like that. In fact, if anything, we might be an Islamic country by that time, because look at the people we're bringing in, right? So we're going to have problems. So I think when I said Canada is going to start to experience Europe's problems 8 to 10 years out, I think I was right. That's when we're going to start to experience the problems, because the demographics, you pick any country in Europe that has done the same thing, Sweden, Germany, France, whatever, where they've rushed people in that fast, they're all in the same crisis mode right now. Now, a lot of it has to do with the migrant crisis, but even without the migrant crisis, they were still having this cultural clash that's going on. I'm not against immigration per se. I'm against mass immigration. If you need people, you can bring some in, but you got to vet the people. You got to have a high standard of immigrant, that type of thing. But what we're doing is just flooding people in for political correct purposes. And I mean, it's just the things I'm watching around the world, and the people that endorse this, especially like the other day in Germany, where you had the Women's March there, and you had this imam yelling, Allah Akbar, and you had all these girls smiling like, oh, that's so culturally neat. And I'm like, boy, you don't get it. Boy, you just don't get it. Cultural, you're going to be enriched, all right. You're going to be enriched, yeah, boy. Again, playing with fire, they just don't understand. But getting back to the economics of it, we're in a weird situation now here in Canada. What might happen is the U.S. dollar, Donald Trump is, and again, a lot of people I don't think understand what Donald Trump is. The left has no clue why Donald Trump won. They think it's because they're racist and bigot, because they can only recite, most of these people are only educated in gender studies and the humanities. So it's not like they understand the real world. They're completely out of touch with the real world. And that's why you have all this, it's almost daily CBC reports of fake news, how we have to go after the fake news. If it's fake news, just leave it be. Don't degrade yourself to that level. But no, go after, there's much more important things than the divide and conquer stuff that they go after, which delegitimizes the CBC and stuff like that. But when I saw that article, of how the demographic change is going to take place in Canada. Now, mind you, this is what the world elites want. I looked at, on Facebook you have a thumbs up, you have a sad face, a happy face, a scared face, or you got all these little faces. And I looked at the people that gave it the thumbs up, and it was a handful of people on the article. Now, mind you, this article has been shared several times, so I guess it depends where it's shared, it depends where you go. But I figured, okay, well, I looked at the article, 3 different sharings. And the theme seemed to be the thumbs up, there was like the little square would come up and there'd be like 5 or 10 people there. Then the sad one, you would see maybe about 20 people there. The happy one, you'd see maybe 10, 15 people there. The angry one, 77, 105. So Canadians are not happy with demographic change. That I think if I polled on 3 sharings of this same article, I think tells you the story. People don't want to change the populace. They don't want to change the demographics. They don't see it as culturally enriching. They don't want to just give their country away because of political correctness or whatever. Now, most of these same people, on the other hand, are probably like myself, not against immigration, but understand that it has to serve a purpose other than political correctness. And when you have so many people coming in, like in the States, over half of the immigrants coming in are on welfare, more than that, and government handouts. Here in Canada, of the refugees that we brought in, okay, I think only 15% are working. So and the government is kind of running out of money to take care of these people as well. So again, deficits, right? So that's one problem we're facing here in Canada. And it's going to escalate and balloon out of proportion very quickly. And it is. I mean, Justin Trudeau, who was only supposed to raise the deficit in stimulus spending by $40 billion in the first year, is over $30 billion in the whole and hasn't started anything. Now, if it wasn't for the 2 pipelines, or now 3rd pipeline coming in, there probably would be no real job creation in this country at all. So we're in a tough situation. Now, if Donald Trump is doing what I'm thinking he's doing, he's getting ready for the insolvency of the United States, he's going to devalue the currency, which will put the Canadian dollar much higher, probably 30 to 50% higher than the U.S. currency. God knows how much higher it will go. But then that's going to kill our exports. You know what I mean? So we'll be fine on the import level, but again, the trade balance will be completely off, and that's going to be bad for Canada because we're not a sovereign nation. Somebody was asking me the other day about why we're building all these pipelines from like the Keystone Pipeline and the Kinder Morgan Pipeline, and we don't just build the refineries. It's an excellent question. We're not allowed to build the refineries because of what Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's dad, did years ago. Signed deals that I think there's 2 major refineries in Canada. One is I think in New Brunswick or someplace, or might be, I think it's New Brunswick. Anyway, I don't know where the other one is. But the idea is that we export our oil to the United States, they refine it, and then we sell it back to us as goods and services. This is the problem that we have as a resource-based economy in Canada. We do the same thing with China. We export our crude oil to them, and they refine it or whatever. Whereas if we were to do the entire process here in Canada, number one, we wouldn't need as many pipelines. And it'd probably actually, maybe you wouldn't have the same amount of people working as you would with a pipeline. I'm not saying have no pipelines. But I mean, how does this not come up in the conversation? Why do we need all the pipelines? To get our oil to the refineries or to the export. So you'll need some pipelines for countries that will say, no, well, we can refine ourselves, just whatever. Or, there's other arguments here too, like, for example, oil is flammable, sure, but it's not as flammable as, petrol, like gasoline. So yeah, if you're, you don't really want gasoline containers going, cargo ships going across the ocean as much as possible. But that said, we ship natural gas and propane and everything by ship anyway. So I don't know. That's an argument we have, and I don't want to speculate on that because I don't know what all the parameters are on that from the environmental side, from the feasibility side. Or is it a question of, okay, yeah, sure, we can refine, but actually slows down the process because now you're waiting on the tractor trailers. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason. But all I can tell you is that basically we can't, and this has to do more with OPEC. NAFTA does have something to do with it as well. Remember, the United States buys 40% of our oil that we produce, and natural gas goes to the States. The United States needs us as much as we need them. We're joined at the hip, you know what I mean? That typically we do 75 to 80% trade. That's why Donald Trump isn't too harsh against us. But he's also out there saying, well, we're not worried about you guys because you guys have, competitive standards that are not, you're not undercutting our labor, you're not, undercutting the regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So that type of thing. So that means no matter which way we go, we're not only faced with high taxation coming down the pipe, but we're also, I think, like some other people were saying, like 4% GDP is just never going to happen again in Canada or the United States. It's just, like the real numbers, not the stuff that they're putting out on the news. And that's the thing, everybody that listens to the mainstream media, yes, there's still a lot of people that are hooked onto it, but I think it's going to turn into a snap. By the end of 2017, I think more people will be going to alternative news sources to get their news, because it doesn't mean you ain't going to get fake news there, but the thing is the mainstream media, they're just in anti-propaganda mode, type of thing, or propaganda mode. It just seems like, you have to believe this or what else. The thing is with the, Justin Trudeau, he's definitely not oil friendly, and I'm the same way where I'm neutral on it. I'd like to see Canada just produce the oil mainly just for us rather than export it. Slow down the rate in which we extract oil, and just be self-sustaining. Just enough to keep ourselves going. Completely energy independent. That'd be good. Yes, export some, but rather than just keep ripping every resource out of the ground. There's enough oil suppliers out there. Sure, it shuts us off from the market to a degree, but that's why you nationalize the oil. Okay, so people do get good paying jobs, whatever. Okay, so we, prop up our resources in Canada a little bit, sure, but then the taxpayer gets the benefit. This is what we used to do, and it actually worked not too bad, where the oil was subsidized. So you had 45 cents a liter, but then the economy just did a lot better. We saw this in the 80s, and then, of course, into the 90s, went into a recession. And, the 80s was boomtown right up until about the mid-90s and stuff like that, early to mid-90s. We started getting into recessions. And there was around that time where they took the oil, they privatized all the oil companies and everything like that, which are still bailed out by the government. So, like, to me, it's all or none. If the government is going to prop it up, these big energy, then we might as well control, the people need to control it, and stuff like that. So, sustainability, then you can make it even cleaner. Yes, okay, so the tax break is basically you pay lower at the pumps, whatever, try to pay as much as you can to, get close to, net neutral with the oil, but we supply our country rather than just try to export it all. Now, we'd lose revenue on that because we don't have a strong economy from within. Now, this is leading up to the universal income. Because you got to see the problems that we're facing. So in other words, we're heading towards global stagnation. We're in global stagnation in a lot of ways. I mean, there is some growth in certain areas. The tech area, there's going to be growth there, that type of thing. And I'm not an economist, but, so some people say, well, no, this area is booming, that area, these technologies are booming, that technology is booming. But that said, as things get more efficient, okay, you're getting rid of all these high-paying jobs in the oil sands, okay? You got 400,000 some odd people that rely on jobs in the oil sands, good paying jobs. Those are about to disappear under the Trudeau watch. It's just he's trying to find a way to do it so that he doesn't lose his voting base, which would want to completely do away with oil altogether. But then we end up buying oil from Saudi Arabia. Which I don't like the idea of giving Saudi Arabia business at all. I mean, until they clean up their Human Rights Act. That type of thing. So we turn our oil internal, then we'd be doing okay. And if we run short, then okay, maybe increase it a bit, or then supplement it from buying from other nations. That type of thing. That's the thing. That's the thing about it. Now the thing is you have another problem coming along, which is driverless cars. A lot of people don't understand. Like Uber is not an organic thing. That is the world elite's. The fact that Uber is using driverless cars, that tells you everything you need to know. And that's what Davos has been pushing. They've been talking about out of Davos in the past 2 years. They're working tractor trailers, basically all the people that are going to haul all this stuff around, goods and services around. Well, we're going to have the oil industry pretty much killed off, which, unfortunately, because of its, the oil industry is what pretty much floats Canada's socialism to a great degree. Not the only thing. It's it's not the major part of the economy, but it's a big chunk of it. It's not the only part of the economy, but it's so linked with so many other things that the domino effect of the oil industry going down in Canada is going to lead to mass layoffs. And there's not enough service sector jobs. I mean, how does somebody who goes from making $60 an hour as an oil rigger plus hazard pay go down to flipping burgers for $10 an hour? You know what I mean? Like that's yeah. Meanwhile, they have to compete with all 300,000 people coming in, soon to be 500,000 people coming into Canada for these same jobs. You know, you're flipping burgers at a joint where you can't afford to eat where you work. You know, like, I mean, those are the wages that we have to look forward to. So they're talking about universal income. They're trying it. They had a referendum on it in Switzerland, got shot down. I think they're trying it in Finland. It's not going to work, obviously. It's a welfare program. The problem is you're increasing the welfare from a few $500 to $600 a month for the average welfare recipient in Canada. Single mothers get much more than that. Maybe they get about $1,000 a month, whatever it is. I seen a pay stub at a bus stop at one point. It was in a project area, and it was basically for a mother with 3 kids, and she was getting $2,000 a month. Yeah. So I'm like, that is just not sustainable. $2,000 a month. That's pretty much would be $24,000 a year, and I don't think that was net, but that was gross. But still, it's $20,000. So to get, I mean, yeah, sure, universal income comes out, I'm going to take it, sure. But I'm going to take that time before it collapses to buy food, to buy, I mean, that would be an increase in pay for me, sure. I'll take it and just, I mean, they're going to crash the system anyway. I might as well get something out of it. I'm going to buy gold, I'll buy silver, I'll buy seeds, buy greenhouses, I'll buy whatever. And, the other thing I'll do is find a way to create a new currency, that type of thing, because it's like, well, if they're going to be that batshit crazy about it at this point, there's no stopping the inevitable. I mean, we're already on the doom train to economic collapse anyway. But now you have this coming in with technologies, and you can already see these technologies in place. Not all the supermarkets have this yet, but some of the bigger, more fancy supermarkets, you walk in, there's 4 cashiers and 9 automated checkout centers. That's your robot economy. That's 9 jobs gone. Now, what they're talking about, again, like anything, you can have any social program you can think of in the world, but the problem is how do you pay for it? And they don't really have a plan to pay for this universal income. They have 2 options. One they're talking about is taxing the robots to pay for the universal income. I have no idea how that's going to work. So for every robot that puts a person out of work, what the income that they would have gotten goes to it still wouldn't be enough. You're putting mankind out of work. Now, it doesn't mean people won't be working at all, but does that also mean universal income? You get your $20,000, you're not allowed to make a cent more? So you're limited at 20 grand isn't very much. Yeah, for somebody like me, it's a step up, but it's not a big step up. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be, oh, wow. Like, I've worked, I worked jobs where, for example, when I used to do the oil sprays on undercoating of cars, I made like $4,500 a month for almost 2 months straight. That was good money. That was freaking good money. That's back in the 90s. My dad used to make that on the pipeline back in the 70s. That was excellent money, back in the 70s. That type of thing. But 20 grand, it's not going to go as far as you think. Will people be comfortable with 20 grand? Well, most people will be able to live within their means, sure. But the idea that you won't be able to go any higher than that, it plateaus you, you know what I mean? But the other problem is, how do you pay for it? That's the biggest problem. The other thing is, the banksters this is why they want a cashless society. I mean, right now, most of the cash, I forget what the number is, but most of the cash in society, okay, is digital. Meaning it's not even worth the money it's not even printed on. And that's a major problem as well, because it's worthless. It's not backed by anything. It's just, in fiat currency and fractional reserve banking, a lot of people don't understand that the only reason why the U.S. petrodollar has value is because people believe it has value. It's backed by nothing. It is backed by nothing. It's just the prettiest girl at the ball, but she's still pretty ugly. And when people start to realize that, then, some will go into gold and silver or Bitcoin or whatever they'll do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because these paradigms, for example, even if you have gold and silver, I'm more of a bread and bullets kind of guy, because that's all I can afford anyway. To me, I see stockpiling gold and silver, okay, sure, it makes, but how do you trade the thing? There's not a system set up to trade that. There used to be, back when the dollars, the Canadian dollar was backed with gold. The U.S. dollar was backed with gold. And under the Harper government, they just started getting rid of the last bits of gold. And then under Trudeau, they got, basically Trudeau got rid of the last few bars of gold that we had, to float his crazy ideas. But now we have no gold in our reserves at all. And so gold and silver, I think, would be good for big purchase stuff. You want to purchase a farm that's been foreclosed on, okay, yeah, you can do that. But restructuring automation and restructuring is going to put a lot of people out of work. And this is something that, not that I necessarily endorse them, but Adolf Hitler even talked about. He's not the only person that's talked about this. That the over-automation of an economy will just put people out of work, and then you're going to have revolutions on your hands. And the thing is he was right. Now, the thing is that that means that Germany could have been much more technically advanced in the 1940s or 1930s than what they were. They didn't move as forward as they let the technology come out naturally. And there's always going to be, like, for example, picking cotton. If we're going to be politically incorrect, we'll talk about picking cotton. Well, that technology doesn't get used as much anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need that anymore. They found new ways to pick cotton. They didn't need the slaves. Okay, so that put a whole bunch of people, whether for good or for bad, out of work. Whatever. And technology changes. Whale oil. We don't use whale oil anymore before we had, like, major petrol and stuff like that, and petroleum products. What we did was use whale oil. The Norwegians and stuff like that, basically the whale, this was something that was done in the 1700s. Whaling was, the story of Moby Dick came out of this as well. That was the second gold rush, was whaling. So at first you went looking for your gold nuggets up at the Klondike, and then when that kind of market fell out a bit to a degree, and bigger mines opened up, and then it was just like, okay, well, the prospector can't compete with that. Well, the next big thing was whale oil. Got to get the whale oil. Here in Canada, the big thing here was to go out into the wilderness and trap beavers for beaver hats. Beaver hats, a lot of people have no idea how that little rodent is so prominent in building the empire of Canada. It's the beaver hats. We were guys back in the 1700s and 1600s were making ridiculous money, like $200, $300, $400 a beaver pelt. Back then, that was like a year's pay, But the problem is a lot of them died trying to do this. And then, of course, the fur companies and stuff like that, they would gyp you as well. So if you could get to the market, then, the fur prices started coming down. And then, of course, once they got down, then you had these 12,000-pound canoes with 20, 30 men in it, portage and the voyageurs, those type of, the toughest men that are, and if you got sick or broke a limb on the way, you died in the bush. It was just brutal work. But men did that because that was the currency of the time. And then, the whalers come out, they got oil, and all of a sudden somebody, Jeb Hillbilly finds a way to shoot a hole in the ground, and up comes the oil, and then they start to find a way to get oil out of the ground. Puts the whaling business out. Suddenly you have all these whalers who no longer have jobs, and then in comes the Industrial Revolution, right? And then all this oil is being pumped and stuff like that, and of course, your Rothschilds and Rockefellers and stuff like that link up, your J.P. Morgans and stuff like that, the banking and all that. Things start to really boom, and then we come around to the 1930s, 1929. You have the stock market crash. 1933, you have the second crash, the big crash, which we haven't hit that second crash yet, which could be just around the corner. It's been looming for a long time as a slow bleed out. I still say there's no crash until war comes, but with Trump, he is a bit of a black swan and a wild card because we don't really know if he's in on the system or not. Some people say, yeah, absolutely. Other people, there's a lot of things that make sense what he's doing, but on the other hand, I think he's getting ready because he knows that the banksters are going to probably, they've got somebody to blame the economic collapse on, but the catch-22 is if they drop the economy on Trump and try to pull out a one-world currency and a universal income and Trump goes along with it, then that was the plan all along. But if he doesn't, then he puts the Iceland solution in play, then the next thing you know, all these bankers are going to be going to jail and not getting bailed out, and the people will be bailed out. And then That the counter to that is a debt jubilee. Sure, it will devalue your currency completely. The U.S. currency will completely fall out, but then it's only up from there. In other words, it'll be. Donald Trump looks like, I don't know if you would say he's crazy enough to hit the reset button or smart enough to hit the reset button. But it doesn't matter how that button gets pushed. Once it does, people are going to die. It's going to be the transfer of wealth is going to be unbelievable. Now, the people that are getting out of Dodge right now, all these, I laugh when they call people, conspiracy theorists and crazy and stuff like that for being preppers or whatever. And I'm not what you'd call a hardcore prepper. For me, I know how to live off the land a bit. I know, again, for me, before I go out and buy 20,000 rounds of ammo, I'm going to buy a seed vault. Whether it's GMO seeds or not, I want to make sure my family can eat. Because if everybody's out of work anyway, well, you're going to use the property to grow. And and it's hard to do. A lot of people don't realize how hard it is to grow food. It takes about 16 weeks to grow an edible crop. How many people die in 16 weeks without, the trucks moving around or whatever? So what they want, the New World Order, the Davos crowd, these philanthropists really want is complete control of the system, a one world government, one world currency, one world law enforcement, one world military, and they believe that this will be, in a global society where there's no borderless societies, no countries, and they want control. They think it's going to be utopia. The problem is it doesn't work like that, because not everybody has the same goals and aspirations and stuff. They also, if you understand the United Nations Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, then you understand how crazy these people actually are. All wrapped in buzzwords of sustainable development and equality and this and that, and eradicating poverty. Yeah, they plan to eradicate poverty by letting everybody starve to death through these food programs that, again, addicting people to a welfare. The problem is most people, they hear the word free and they think there's no cost to it. But there is a cost. There always is a cost. So driverless tractor trailers and driverless cars, driverless buses, how many people are out of work just on that? Cashierless stores. Wow. So that gives people two options. Go with the system, three options. Fight the system, or innovate around the system. And this is where universal income, they'll probably make it illegal for you to have your own job once they get universal income in. Because at that point, they're just going to pull everybody down except for the select few at the top. But at that point, too, especially if it's a digital currency only and all your transactions are online, we hit a button when you say a bad word and we get a fine. You make a transaction with anybody, we get a chunk of it. That's how these bankers work. They're just ripping the people off left, right. This idea that we have to tax everybody at every angle that's what makes everybody so much poor. So, yeah, sure, they'll probably give you a $20,000 universal income, but the catch-22 is your taxes are probably going to be $7,000. So, it's just going to go back to the government. I remember the NDP, Tom Mulcair, talking about how, he wish everybody had a government job in Canada. No, the government is the problem. Now, Donald Trump, the stuff he's talking about, will move us away from this. Again, I'm not against the technology. There would be merits into a $20,000, universal income if it could be sustained, but it can't be sustained. And again, this idea, why are we trying to make the third world into the first world when they don't want to be there? They're resisting it. And when they resist it, we call them terrorists. That's completely insane. We don't need to be in the third world. And from a sustainable point of view, just an environmental point of view, the people living in the grass huts, they're not hurting the environment. You know what I mean? Okay, they have a little wood fire in the middle of the village to warm everybody up. Okay, fine, they're burning a bit of trees, whatever. They're not. They're the most freaking low carbon footprint people on the planet. And you want to modernize them with automobiles and all that stuff? No, mind you, if they want to get there, sure, I'm all for that. But let it happen naturally and sustainably. Because all these countries, they don't even have to, all they have to do is duplicate. They don't have to invent anything. Nobody has to invent anything to have a good quality of life. They just got to duplicate what we already have. But that's the thing. The batch of technologies that's coming out, the tech age, pretty much took the nuclear age to the next level. You know what I mean? The tech age is where we're in a tech boom. The last past, since the 1950s, has just been I would say from World War II on, has been just a freight train of technology. Some of it much of it being hidden back. So how far advanced are we really? Well, for example, ion pulse engines. I mean, we already got those things. You know, they're not economic to build, but we can build them. You know, you can build the low scale versions of them, which I'm in the process of doing. It's going to be. I got to get a power supply to do it though. I don't know how much a power supply would be. Maybe I'll see if I could do some sort of a GoFundMe for the power supply unit. And then I got the copper, and I'm actually going to start soldering some of that up today. I got the copper and everything I want. So I'm going to do the first engine. Then they're going to make a V8 ion engine. You're going to like that one. That one's pretty cool, if I can pull it off. But long story short, it doesn't really matter because the technology will come out when it's ready. You know, nobody can stop an idea whose time has come. But the problem with this universal income is that we're doing it while we're trying to dumb down people and make them dependent on government. And you know, it's just control, control, control. These strangely authoritarian, they want like this kind of authoritarian egalitarianism. It's a weirdest thing. It's a completely nightmarish society, dystopia, where we want such a perfect society but you know, they have to go so tyrannical to achieve it. And that's the way these world elites, like they're just complete psychopaths. You know, we want to control your speech, we want to control how much you make, what you eat, where you live, how big you live, how many people get to live. I mean, you know, this is the same people that say, you know what, when you're 75, rather than put healthcare services for you, we're just going to put you down like a dog. We'll do it humanely, so die with dignity at 75. That's a lot of people don't understand like this. That's why it's such a big thing on the news. The doctor-assisted suicide. That's a eugenics project. You know, because it starts with people with cerebral palsy and stuff like that. You know, and you can make a case for it to a degree. But when you understand the people that are pushing it, and you hear their stances on other things, you understand that that's where they want to start. I remember John McClellan, you know, out there with the, you know, talking about, you know, oh, well, we want to have a progressive tax, you know, tax the rich. That's where we want to start. And that's what it means. They start up here and then just work their way down. They always do this. And that's the thing. Mankind can flourish if we get the taxation out of the way. We don't need all this welfare. We need jobs, you know. And the best way to get jobs is to allow small business to just flourish. But with extreme automation, then that leaves people, they have to get creative doing other things. Maybe artworks, whatever. The AI is okay to have and stuff like that, even highly advanced. But they're even talking about video games now. Like, I mean, think about The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, where people are stuck in this Matrix thing with this thing over their face, and they're, you know, basically being harvested for their energy, and they have no idea. But the thing is that the virtual reality that they're talking about now at Davos and stuff like that, that in only a decade or two, it's going to be indistinguishable from real world. It's going to be so advanced that you'll be in a virtual reality simulator and you won't even know it. Maybe we already are. Who knows, right? So yeah, the universal income thing is basically the tech giants and stuff like that. And again, I know I jump all over the place. ADD, I guess. Where, you know, they talk about people that warn against this and the people that are, you know, prepping and stuff like that are quacks and weirdos. Well, recently, the amount of tech billionaires from Silicon Valley, and there's, you know, all these world elites that are heading to their bunkers right now. These billion, you know, refurbished, you know, nuclear silos and you know, all this property that they're buying in New Zealand. So and they're heading there now. What do these world elites know that we don't? Well, anybody that's paying attention understands that war is still on the cards, you know, with China and Russia and stuff like that, even under Trump. Trump might be moving away from Russia, the Russia bashing a bit, but, you know, we're ramping up against Iran and China. Now, that said, maybe Trump, depending on how he deals with China, could be a good thing or a bad thing. But for the global economy, I mean, when the United States decides to declare bankruptcy and go insolvent, it takes out every economy in the world, which then the Rothschilds can come in and say, here's our 2018 one world currency. But you have to burn all the other currencies, which mean people are going to die in the masses. That's what these world elites are really up to. Now, when they do that, my hope is that there's enough people waking up that when they do that, that if the law enforcement military will not put these people in jail, then the people will revolt and there'll be a pitchfork revolution. And at that point, they'll be hanging from the street lamps. That's my hope. Because we can't go on with this small class of people who think they're higher than everybody just because they've got a currency that people actually believe in. No. We're going to have to level this out a bit. And when three of the richest people on the planet own more wealth than the poorest, 3 billion, or the next 3 billion combined, I mean, that tells you something. I mean, it'd be okay if they got this wealth naturally, but they don't, because none of these Rothschilds, Rockefellers, or George Soros. I mean, George Soros basically worked for the Nazis, stealing property from the Jews. That's how he made his money. And this man still walks free, let alone all the other crazy things he does. Hopefully these guys get taken down. Now, if Trump's a good guy, they will be taken down. But the problem is the entire system is corrupt, meaning that if it goes down, everything goes down. So a universal income, I don't think will be the stimulus program that they think it is. All these big make-work projects, okay, which I'm not against, like, for example, pipelines and stuff like that, or whatever. But that's the only thing we're investing in. We need to invest in other things. I mean, for example, recycling. That's a great way to, it's still the same. You're still making a profit to a degree. Get those kind of programs going. Okay, well, the government will pay for the entire infrastructure for this, and it'll be under government control in the sense of whatever, but it'll be run like a business so that it's net neutral. And then we can hire welfare recipients instead of having them sit on their ass for money. Maybe that'll be their universal income. We're going to get you to do something and get productivity. That would work. Make work projects are better than welfare. To have people sit on their ass for 20 grand a year, no. The thing is you could do that to a degree. And you could do this under a balanced budget as well. But you need a nationalist government in Canada, which I am starting to see the rumblings of a nationalist government. It's just, will they come in the next 4 years? I don't think so. That a nationalist party needs to come in now. They need to get ready to run in 2020 or 2019 or whatever. Because we could probably do another 4 years with the Conservatives if they can get in. And some of these Conservative candidates, like Kelly Leitch, I kind of like some of her stance, but how is she going to fix the economy? I don't know. Rhonda Ambrose out there, I don't know if she's running for leadership. She's the interim leader right now. She is a smart woman, but there's a lot of areas where I disagree with her and she's a globalist. But the problem is we got to move away from the global. We need to be more independent. And that can't happen unless we have a sovereign, non-divided country. And we only get that out of nationalism. We don't get that out of anything else. And so the globalization, I'm not against doing trade with other countries. In fact, I'm very happy that Trump wants to renegotiate NAFTA. But where I'm not happy is that we have Trudeau at the table. Because, I mean, he'll just say, okay, well, whatever you want to do. It's not going to benefit. NAFTA fucked us over in the first place. There were the benefits that we get from it could be so much better if we worked out better. A fair trade system, not a free trade system. I'm not for free trade. I mean, the argument was good at the time to a degree, but it just raised our dollar to the lowest, to buy the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder and raise our dollar to the bottom, and now we're there. So are the wages. Whereas if we go with a fair wage system, whoever has the highest standard we comply to, then everybody's on a high-end playing field. Will it up in the prices of things? Yes, but it also uppens wages. And when that happens, then competition is a lot more equal, all these type of things. The other thing, too, is if you want to keep inflation low, is you got to balance your currency, pay off your deficit. And then if your currency goes too high, well, okay, fine. You're not going to export very much, fine. Then you turn your resources inward if people can't afford to buy the resources from you. But imports will be like, no problem. I'm going to buy 3 Ferraris this week. The other 2 I don't want anymore. I'll donate them to the third world. Whatever. Why? Because $1 Canadian would be worth like 100,000, U.S. dollars. Or what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. You say that'll never happen. Well, yes, that can happen. Venezuela. I think for $1 U.S. Venezuela will have to pay something like $600,000 of their money. Why? Because their economy's busted. Why is their economy busted? Well, there's 2 things. Number one, the CIA's in there trying to do regime change. Same old, same game. Same game in Ukraine that the U.S. has done, again, regime change there. Syria, regime change. They want to do regime change in Russia. They want to do regime change in Iran, in Beijing, in North Korea, and it goes and goes and goes. They want to do this in Cuba. They want to do this in Venezuela and anywhere. The idea is to get everybody onto the petrodollar. The petrodollar right now is kind of the one world currency, but we see it's a death and debt-based economy that it can only be sustained through war. Either take the U.S. currency or we drop democracy JDAMs on you. And many Americans are waking up to this idea. Now, how awake is Trump to this idea? I think to a great degree he knows. But that said, the wars are already there. So he's already inherited the wars of the Middle East to a degree. He doesn't have to expand them, but we do got to get rid of ISIS. Easiest way to stop funding them, number one. But Trump said it would take him about 2 years to get everything online. But at the speed he's working at, it's unbelievable. Like, again, this is the efficiency a politician should have. And here in Canada, we don't have that kind of efficiency. So that tells you how redundant the government actually is. Most government employees are not needed. We need to go back to like a Sir John A. Macdonald type of, when our first prime minister, basically you had to have a receipt for everything. If you went out to lunch, this was the budget you were given for your lunch, if it was a meeting or whatever, and you had to have receipts for it. Like, he ran a tight ship. Now, mind you, the government was so much smaller back then, it was much more manageable, but it wasn't as automated, it didn't have computers, you had to do everything by hand, add up everything, whatever. I'm sure there was still fraud in the government back then as well, but for the most part, he always had a balanced budget. The government never lived outside its boots, too big for its boots, living outside its means. We now have a government that's way too big for its boots. So the first thing we need to do is balance the budget. From a balanced budget, then we can start tackling the deficit and lowering the taxes. And we can shrink the government through attrition. Basically, people start, retiring or whatever, and get rid of big entitlements. Like, for example, MPs that work for 6 years and they get $100,000, $140,000 for the rest of their life in pensions. No. We retire, everybody retires at the same time on the government pension. And just prorate their pension, basically, or not prorate it, but just, the idea of the government subsidy should be every pensioner should get the same thing on the government dole, regardless of, if they contributed more into it, okay, fine. But if they didn't contribute more into it, if they're on a, because there's so many people that are on government pensions that don't have their own pension plan. I don't have I kind of have a pension plan from my last job, but that's not going to get me very far. If I get a year out of it by the time I'm 65, I'll be lucky. But if the markets crash again, like last time I lost 25 grand in it. It was almost like over 7.5 years with all my RSPs and everything that went in there, and the deferred profit sharing was at almost $30,000 or something like that, and then bang, there it was 25 grand, so I'm down to 5 grand. Like, you know what I mean? So I can't even rely on that. That was supposed to be my pension. I don't know what it's up to now there, but it's definitely because I'm not contributing anymore to it because I don't work for that company anymore. But I can't touch that pension until I'm 65. Well, I guess now 67. That type of thing. So the way they're going about it, they could balance the economy. They could have enough jobs. They don't need to over-automate. Just because the technology is there doesn't mean we have to use it. Let it happen naturally. So let's say, okay, well, somebody comes in. Technologies are going to go. I mean, for example, when they figure out how to build a thorium car that you won't get irradiated from, guess what? Fossil fuels will be gone. They figure out how to do fusion. Nuclear power is gone. Those things are gone. Well, not nuclear power per se, but like the power. One fusion center will power the entire country, maybe two, rather than the same way hydro dams got shut down for nuclear power. So the technology just deplaces, and the change is always massive. People out of work, so you got to be ahead of the curve on it. But the thing is the difference in this day and age is the amount of government control over people and the fact that they're going to control every aspect of your life. That was the whole point of Agenda 2030, and Agenda 21 is to centralize government power so that they have the United Nations has control over every country, everybody's government. You might as well say that Canada is run by the United Nations and George Soros. Again, our foreign policies are all based on what the United Nations wants, pretty much. All this crazy gender parity stuff coming in, which sounds great in the buzzwords, but when you realize what it is, I think the breakaway society is going to be white men. That there's no doubt about that. We're so hated right now, it's not funny. When you have even white people out in the streets in these leftist protests in the tens of thousands yelling, fuck all white men, What does that tell you? That tells you a breakaway society and a new technology is about to emerge. And it's going to come out through violence, sure. But I think what happens is, not just the white men, there's going to be white women going as well. The ones that are woken up to all this, they're not going to stick around for it because they understand how degenerate it is. The question is just where do we go? In 4 years, what country do I leave to if Trudeau gets in again? Because we won't survive in 8 years. And the idea of being a pioneer going somewhere else, it looks like it's going to be a challenge. It looks going to be very scary. And again, there's only going to be a handful of people at a time that are going to be willing to do this. But they're going to create a new society, and it's going to be a breakaway society, just like I said would happen. We already, you could see the dots connecting. You could see the dots connecting. Again, I'm not going to be able to live in a world where they're going to have a white male tax, regardless of my income. I'm not going to be able to live into a world where they're talking about ending whiteness through genocide. I know that's not going to work out well for me. It's not going to work out well. Now I don't have a wife and kids, so I can be that whaler or the prospector or the fur trade guy. I can be that guy. I can be that guy that paves the dangerous road for others to safely walk down. And if I die in the process, well, I died building something new. And that's the way you have to look at it. Okay, well, if they're going to have these technologies, well, we'll just take those technologies and start a breakaway society with those technologies outside this crazy system of enslavement. Now, the problem with that is as soon as you have a breakaway society, that threatens the status quo. You're already seeing this now. This is where the wars come from. So this is kind of also, it's kind of like Empire 101, where one of the first things you have to do is, create a military to defend your state. But that's also Empire 101. What destroys almost all states is too much militarization. The United States, the United States is, in a very bad position. So a reset button is the most humane thing to actually hit. And to hit that reset button and put almost 90% of your economy out of work, wow. Even a universal income, that could be the stimulus plan for now. And if they would have done this in 2008, say, okay, well, rather than bailing out the banks, we'll say, screw the banks. We're never going to, secure your retirement deposits again. But what we'll do instead is just give people the money, spend it. You got 2 years of income, spend it wisely. We can't bail you out a second time. Get the economy going. Open a business, deregulate. Take that time to get things going. Let the chips fall where they may. That type of thing. But you can't do this with an inflating population of mass immigration. It's impossible to sustain. And we'll have to wait and see where they take this one. But again, if you're from Finland, I'd love to see how, let me know how it's working. It's going to work fine in the first year or two because they're going to fund it for the first year or two. But just, if we could document it of how catastrophically it's going to fail and how authoritarian it's going to get just because, okay, well, when it starts failing, well, let's put it to you this way. Okay, taxation came in, as a war tax in World War I. We had to pay this war tax because the war was expensive. Now the banks made money hand over fist on this. Then World War II came along. We're still paying off World War I, debt from World War I. Just so you know, most countries that participated in that are. Now that happens, then we need Social Security and all that. That came in as well in the 1930s, and we have to pay for that. Okay, but then the baby boomers come in and we have the Social Security funding the retirement. So the younger generation will pay for the older generation. Problem is the baby boomers were families of 7, 5, 7, 10, whatever. Then the Gen Xers like myself come along and we're families of 3 or 4 or 2. The millennials come along, or Generation Y comes along, and then the millennials, and they're like, if they have kids at all, it's usually 1. The triangle's reversed. So those people cannot fund those baby boomers. That said, you don't need those people. So the goal became, mass immigration. But mass immigration doesn't fund, because people coming in just go on welfare. So, Now, under the Harper government, 85% of the people coming in were working migrants. So that helped our economy. Yes. Nobody had a problem with that. It still was too many people. But it helped the economy. But the thing is you can cut foreign aid spending and other crazy... for example, if the United States were to close some of its military bases, it could fund its healthcare, it could fund its do you really need 800 military bases around the world? You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. 700 to 800 military bases around. Of course not. The money they waste on that could go into Social Security. It could go into, healthcare, that type of thing. Paved roads, whatever it be. And you could do things like that. But you have to cut the foreign aid spending. The $10 billion a day, something like that, going to Israel from the United States. God knows how much Canada pays Israel. We don't need to be giving money to Israel. We don't need to be giving money to all these other countries. We don't need to be in the IMF. We don't need to be in NATO. We don't need to be in the United Nations. We could privatize Air Canada. We could privatize, Bombardier. We could privatize, completely, one or the other. Privatize the automotive industry. Privatize it all. And if it doesn't re-innovate, then it'll fail. And then whatever. Or you completely nationalize it. You nationalize the banks, whatever. Restore the Bank of Canada, that type of thing. You could have, stimulus spending, 5% of GDP like they were doing before, which kept our debt low. Again, as soon as we went off the gold standard, you just see the printing presses, just burning out. Like, again, that's the other thing they're going to do is just print money and, they're not even going to print the money. It's just going to be digital numbers. It has no value. Now, to a degree, some people argue, yeah, but even if we know it's a scam, at least you got 20 grand that you can buy stuff with. That is true. But what's it really going to cost you in the end? And it's not even a currency thing. It's a liberty thing. The idea that every single aspect of your life has to be controlled by the government. I mean, it's just bizarre. Like, to me, I'm just like, why do we need that much control over everybody? Like some control makes okay. You want law and order in your society, but is what it is. But anyway, I guess I'm going to leave it at that. So the universal income, I think, is a bad idea. I don't see a formula that's going to work. That's not going to make things worse. Usually, every time these people come up with this stuff, it just kicks the can down the road of just, Mr. Trump, just hit the damn button. We'll take it. We'll take the hit now so the future generations don't have to. All right, so if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation. Channel links down below. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Next time, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day. Eh? G'day, hi, and welcome. Oh, what video was I going to make? It's bloody freaking snowing out there, and my van's thermostat isn't working. Yeah, it's official. My van needs medical help. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So, I had 2 videos. Which one should I make first? Okay, yeah, I guess this plays in. Throw some numbers at you. Okay. It looks like up here in Canada, Justin Trudeau's plan. Check out my hat. Well, basically, there's going to be tax hikes between now and 2055. Yeah, it's like increasing to tackle the debt burden that he's putting on now. How much tax increases, I don't know. But again, he didn't run. He's run up the taxes or the deficit pretty high for 1 year. But I don't know if we're talking like 0.8 of a tax hike, that type of thing. But it's still a tax hike nonetheless. The other thing is that by that time or around that time, I was also reading that Justin Trudeau's plan that he has at the current rate we're going at would have us at 1.5 or 1.35 trillion dollars around that time. That's when Canada. That's not that far away when you think about it. It's not like the States where they rack up trillions of dollars every year. About $4 trillion a year type of thing. But it's significant. That is significant for the future generations to have to pay off. And the thing is we could, right from where we are now, 4 years of Justin Trudeau puts us in a bad spot, but 8 years of Justin Trudeau destroys the country, which right now the new census polls, I think, or whatever, coming out of Canada, is by 2036, pretty much half of the Canadian demographic will be either foreign-born or children of immigrants. So the demographic change is well under place, and that's not that far away, really. That's only, 50. We're 2017, so 10 years, 9 years, 9 years away. 20 years away. I can't add today. Yeah, so it's 2017. Yeah, so just about 20 years away, and that's going to go fast. Now, that's if we keep at current immigration levels of almost 500,000 people a year, which is, remember, the government has turned it into a very profitable thing to have mass immigration. It's not really done from a point of view of, cultural enrichment and all stuff like that. In fact, if anything, we might be an Islamic country by that time, because look at the people we're bringing in, right? So we're going to have problems. So I think when I said Canada is going to start to experience Europe's problems 8 to 10 years out, I think I was right. That's when we're going to start to experience the problems, because the demographics, you pick any country in Europe that has done the same thing, Sweden, Germany, France, whatever, where they've rushed people in that fast, they're all in the same crisis mode right now. Now, a lot of it has to do with the migrant crisis, but even without the migrant crisis, they were still having this cultural clash that's going on. I'm not against immigration per se. I'm against mass immigration. If you need people, you can bring some in, but you got to vet the people. You got to have a high standard of immigrant, that type of thing. But what we're doing is just flooding people in for political correct purposes. And I mean, it's just the things I'm watching around the world, and the people that endorse this, especially like the other day in Germany, where you had the Women's March there, and you had this imam yelling, Allah Akbar, and you had all these girls smiling like, oh, that's so culturally neat. And I'm like, boy, you don't get it. Boy, you just don't get it. Cultural, you're going to be enriched, all right. You're going to be enriched, boy. Again, playing with fire, they just don't understand. But getting back to the economics of it, we're in a weird situation now here in Canada. What might happen is the U.S. dollar, if Donald Trump is, and again, a lot of people I don't think understand what Donald Trump is. The left has no clue why Donald Trump won. They think it's because they're racist and bigot, because they can only recite, most of these people are only educated in gender studies and the humanities. So it's not like they understand the real world. They're completely out of touch with the real world. And that's why you have all this, it's almost daily CBC reports of fake news, how we have to go after the fake news. Like, if it's fake news, just leave it be. Don't degrade yourself to that level. But no, go after, there's much more important things than the divide and conquer stuff that they go after, which delegitimizes the CBC and stuff like that. But when I saw that article of how the demographic change is going to take place in Canada, now mind you, this is what the world elites want. I looked at, on Facebook you have a thumbs up, you have a sad face, a happy face, a scared face, or you got all these little faces. And I looked at the people that gave it the thumbs up, and it was a handful of people on the article. Now, mind you, this article has been shared several times, so I guess it depends where it's shared, it depends where. But I figured, okay, well, I looked at the article in 3 different sharings, and the theme seemed to be the thumbs up. There was like the little square would come up, and there'd be like 5 or 10 people there. Then the sad one, you would see maybe about 20 people there. The happy one, you'd see maybe 10, 15 people there. The angry one, 77, 105. So Canadians are not happy with demographic change. That I think if I polled on 3 sharings of the same article, I think tells you the story. People don't want to change the populace. They don't want to change the demographics. They don't see it as culturally enriched. They don't want to just give their country away because of political correctness or whatever. Now, most of these same people, on the other hand, are probably like myself, not against immigration, but understand that it has to serve a purpose other than political correctness. And when you have so many people coming in, like in the States, over half of the immigrants coming in are on welfare, more than that, and government handouts. Here in Canada, of the refugees that we brought in, okay, I think only 15% are working. So and the government is kind of running out of money to take care of these people as well. So again, deficits, right? So that's one problem we're facing here in Canada. And it's going to escalate and balloon out of proportion very quickly. And it is. I mean, Justin Trudeau, who was only supposed to raise the deficit in stimulus spending by $40 billion in the first year, is over $30 billion in the whole and hasn't started anything. Now, if it wasn't for the 2 pipelines, or now 3rd pipeline coming in, there probably would be no real job creation in this country at all. So we're in a tough situation. Now, if Donald Trump is doing what I'm thinking he's doing, he's getting ready for the insolvency of the United States, he's going to devalue the currency, which will put the Canadian dollar much higher, probably 30 to 50% higher than the U.S. currency. God knows how much higher it will go. But then that's going to kill our exports. You know what I mean? So we'll be fine on the import level, but again, the trade balance will be completely off, and that's going to be bad for Canada because we're not a sovereign nation. Somebody was asking me the other day about why we're building all these pipelines from, like the Keystone Pipeline and the Kinder Morgan Pipeline, and we don't just build the refineries.